Have you ever had a moment where a memory came back to you, maybe from a long time ago or from early childhood, and it told you a whole bunch of things about yourself? Maybe this was a memory you knew about but hadn't thought about in a long time. Or maybe it's something that you didn't even remember before this moment. Has it ever happened to you while you're waiting in line for something for a long time? Do you love queuing up? Yeah, neither do I. Okay, so last year, I'm waiting in line at the border. I'm trying to get into the United States. I'm at the truck crossing. And it was about a 45-minute wait. Ugh, and I didn't have Nexus. Everybody say ugh with me. Yeah, it was terrible. And so I'm in line, and I've got the whole family in the car. Kids are in the back. They're fighting, squabbling. I'm trying to manage everything at the same time. It was right around my youngest son's birthday, and he had just turned 5. And I was thinking about the fact that now my youngest son had turned 5. And all of a sudden, a memory from when I was 5 years old flooded back into my mind. And it taught me so much about myself. Here was the memory. It's a little bit sad. When I was 5 years old, actually on my 5th birthday, at that birthday party, someone who was very important to me failed to fulfill a promise that they had made to me. I won't go into the details of what it was. But someone very, very important to me did not fulfill a promise to me on my 5th birthday. And the memory that flooded back to me in that moment was a memory of what I did in my mind when that happened. In my mind, as a 5-year-old, think about how little I was, I said to myself, you cannot rely on anyone else. You're alone. If you want to succeed, if you want something to happen in your life, you have to do it yourself. No one else is coming to help you, Isaac. In that moment, I decided that I can't trust anyone else. Not at that deepest level. Isn't that sad? It influenced the whole rest of my life. And even today, I'm still trying to recover from it. Aren't I, Pastor Phil? I am. We're in a series right now called Wisdom for Living. And in this series, we're looking at wisdom from the Bible, from God's Word, most of it from the book of Proverbs and a few other places. We talked about last week how that wisdom, God has built certain principles into the universe, into reality. And if you are following them, it's like you're going with the flow of the universe. It's like you're going with the flow of how God made things. It's like going downstream. We talked about running down a river, which is something I did in high school. But if you're going against them, it's like trying to run upstream. You're going against the way that things are made, and life will be much, much harder. So in the series, we're looking at different areas of life, and this week we're taking our first specific area. We're looking at friends and neighbors. We'll be talking a lot about friendship today, and the book of Proverbs in the Bible has a ton to say about this. So there will actually be a lot of Bible verses today, more than usual. We've got a lot of work to do, but there'll be a lot of great stuff in the message. And then next week, you'll see we're moving on to anger. That's going to be one that you're not going to want to miss. And in your bulletin, right on the front, you've got a list of what the different topics will be throughout the summer. And that's so that you can think about, oh, this is one that I for sure don't want to miss, and I know someone who needs to come hear this one. You can pray for them, and you can invite them to come. So we're going to be looking at friendship. And first, we're going to start out in the book of Ecclesiastes, which is related to the book of Proverbs. We're going to look at one section that's going to tell us about what is friendship. What blocks us from having close friendships much of the time? We're going to try and unpack some lies that many of us have believed, just like I did when I was 5 years old. And then we're going to move into how God is trying to restore our ability to have close, deep friendships. And then what kind of friends we should choose. you actually have an opportunity within within the realm of possibility in your life to choose your friends. And then how do we be a good friend? How can I be a better friend? That's how we're going to close up the message today. So let's start off in Ecclesiastes. And this is an amazing section. Ecclesiastes in chapter 4. We'll start with verses 7 to 8. And then in a couple of minutes, we'll read the next few verses right afterwards. But in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 7 to 8, Solomon paints a picture for us. He gives us an image of a person alone. Let's take a look at that image. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil. Yet his eyes were not content with all his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. Look at the image there that Solomon paints for us. Let's have the next picture. I have a little image there for us on the screen of a man working alone. Here we have a man whose entire life has become obsessed with work. He's trying to gather more and more resources, more and more money, be more and more successful. The way that he's managing his life is by his own control and trying to achieve something with his own power. And even he himself doesn't understand why he's doing it. Did you see that in the text? He says to himself, why am I working so hard? He doesn't even know, and yet he can't stop. He's actually become addicted to it. And this is one of the ways that human beings in a broken, ruined world, without right relationships with each other, this is one of the ways that we cope. We become addicted to all kinds of things. Sometimes those addictions are really obvious, like drugs or alcohol, but most of the time those addictions are other things. Work. We use something in our life to replace the thing that we're missing at the deepest level. Now we're going to be talking about friendship today, and friendship is one deep form of relationship. The Bible is, of course, all about restoring our relationships. Our mission here at Community of Hope Church is to help people grow in their relationship with God and with each other. The most important relationship that we have, or can have, is our relationship with God. But also, just like it, and just like it in importance, is the relationships that we have with other people. Our friendships, our deep friendships. And the image here that Solomon paints for us is one of darkness. And this man it's like he's in prison. He's locked up in jail, and he doesn't know how he got there. And he's continuing to keep himself there. He doesn't know how to get out. So I want to ask the question as we begin, how did he get there? How did he get to this place, this person, where he's addicted, in this case, to work? He's constantly working. He can't stop. And he has no relationship. He's all by himself, isolated from other human beings. And he doesn't know how he got there. And he doesn't know how to get out. How did he arrive in this place? He arrived there by believing a number of lies. And I think the pattern goes something like this. It begins right where I began when I was 5 years old. It begins with broken trust. You see, in this world, everything is messed up. There's a lot of good in the world. God loves us, but this world is deeply broken. And every human being right under the surface is all twisted out of shape. And so what will, not what might, but what will happen to you in this world, and has already happened to you, is that the people who are the closest to you have wronged you. They've hurt you. They've broken trust with you. And when that happens, one of the ways we can respond is the way that I did. We can respond by saying, because this person who was so close to me broke trust with me, I am concluding. The logic is that I can't trust anyone. In fact, I must rely on myself. I can't trust anyone. This is actually a lie. Who can we always trust? Who do we have a relationship with, or can we have a relationship with, who we can always trust no matter what? God. You can have a relationship with God through his Son, Jesus Christ, and he will never, ever let you down. But more than that, it's not true that I can't trust anyone just because this one person in my life broke trust with me on one occasion. It's not true. But when I believe this lie, I start living outside of relationship. So one of the things in that moment waiting in line at the border that struck me and made my memory come back was that my son, who was 5 years old, he asked for help. I don't even remember what he asked for help with. It might have just been, I can't open this drink that I'm trying to drink, or can you hand me something? And what came into my mind was, when I was 5 years old, I never would have asked. I wouldn't have even asked the people around me for help in basic needs because I had decided I had to do it on my own. And I internalized that. It was a lie that sank down deep into me. And so in that state, you begin to live in isolation. Even while there are people around you who love you and care about you, you begin to live in isolation. And as you live in isolation, you experience isolation. And that happened to me. So even though there were people around me who loved me, who were trying to care for me, I didn't feel that love or that care because I wouldn't let them in. And as a result, I began to believe what I'm going to call here the second lie. And that lie is, you could say it a number of different ways. No one understands me. No one can understand me. No one can relate to me. There's no one in my life or anywhere around me who can relate to me. It's a lie. It's not true. The people around you are experiencing much of the same things that you are. But when you live in isolation by your own choice, and you experience that isolation, you start to believe this lie. Because I don't feel connected to the people around me, I think I can't be connected to them. There's something wrong with me or with them that it just can never be fixed. And so I've entered into the second lie. This is how the man progresses into this state of isolation and working alone. And finally, after you've lived in that isolation long enough, you come up with ways to manage your life. Because as we'll see in a minute, human beings were made for relationship. You cannot live an effective life in isolation. And so you have to come up with something to try and fill that gap, or you'll die. You'll end up killing yourself. And so you pick some addiction or something that you're going to focus all your energy on. We might call it worship. You pick something because you have to have something that feels close to you that you can hang on to. I won't go into all the things that I picked, but in this image from Ecclesiastes, the man picks his work. He chooses his work as the thing he's going to cling to. And once he's used that to manage his life long enough, he comes to believe the final lie. And here's the final lie. I don't actually need anyone else. I don't actually need friends or close relationships. I'm okay on my own. But what the Bible is screaming out is no, no, you are not okay on your own. We'll go through the next series of verses that come right after that in a minute. But first, let's look at the whole direction of the Bible. The whole direction. So we know that Jesus came to earth, the Son of God, sent by God the Father in order to save us. We're lost in this isolation, this darkness, working on our own. All our relationships are broken because we've chosen to go the wrong way, just like I did when I was 5. But he came, He did amazing things while he was here, and then he died on the cross so that we could be forgiven, but not just that, so that our relationships could begin to be restored. First, our relationship with God, and then little by little, our relationships with other people by his power. And I want to read one verse here that's found in Ephesians chapter 1. Let's pull that up on the screen. And this verse is talking about, why did God do all this? Why did God, and God has been working on this for thousands of years, working on a plan to save the human race. What's the ultimate goal? What's the vision in the end? And this is what Ephesians chapter 1 says. God made known to us the mystery of his will, according to his good pleasure, which he purposed in Christ. So he told us what his plan is. The plan that he's putting into effect through Jesus Christ. To be put into effect when the times reach their fulfillment. So this is what it's going to look like in the end. This is what we're going for. To bring unity to all things in heaven and on earth under Christ. This is the end goal that God himself is working toward. He's trying to bring all people, and in fact everything in the whole universe, into unity with him and with each other. That's his goal. So let's look at then how we can begin to follow him in that goal and unpack some of these lies. We're not left in the dark place, working on our own feverishly, not knowing why or not knowing how to get out of it. God has come. He's come to save us from that awful nightmare. Now, how can we begin to work our way out? By unpacking these lies. Let me read the next several verses from Ecclesiastes. So this is Ecclesiastes 4, starting at verse 9 and through verse 12. In response to this image of the man working alone, he says, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good return for their labor. If either one of them falls down, one can help the other up. Isn't that a simple thought? But it's profound. Someone can help you. You need help. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. If you're in a fight, if life comes at you and attacks you like an enemy, 2 can defend themselves. And a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Here we have the antidote. Here we have the way back. And we'll begin unpacking these lies in reverse order. So let's begin with this lie that I don't need anyone else. We've already said the Bible is clear. We were actually made to be in relationship with God and with other people. In fact, you were made, this is the first point you can write down in your notes, you were made to run on relationship. You were made to run on relationship. Jesus said about food, physical food, he said human beings don't live on bread or food alone, but on every word that comes from God, from the mouth of God. Words are a means of communication. What he's saying is that it's our relationship with God that we're made to run on, not just or not even physical food. We see the same thing in the very opening chapters of the Bible. In Genesis chapter 2, when the first human being is there, Adam, and he's all by himself. He's got the animals around him. He's even got God with him. But what does God say about him? He says, it is not good that he should be alone. And he makes another human being, Eve, to be his wife and his friend and his neighbor. Neighbor just means the one who is near me, the people that God has surrounded me with. It is not good for a human being to be alone. Let's look a little bit outside the Bible here. We'll jump to this quote from the Harvard Medical School. And this is a quote about relationships and your health. Did you know that there is a ton of research out there that demonstrates conclusively that people with strong, deep relationships are much, much healthier than people without them? Check out this quote. Harvard Medical School. Dozens of studies have shown that people who have satisfying relationships with family, friends, and their community are happier, have fewer health problems, and live longer. Let that sink in for a minute. You often think, oh, I need to exercise if I want to be healthy. You do, but guess what's actually as great an impact as exercise, or maybe even more? Your friendships. How your marriage is going. What your family relationships are like. Have more of an impact than your exercise on your health. Next screen. Conversely, a relative lack of social ties is associated with depression and later life cognitive decline. That means your brain's going to start dying without relationships. As well as with increased mortality. That means your body's going to die without relationships. Next screen. And check this out. One study, which examined data from more than 309,000 people, found that a lack of strong relationships increased the risk of premature death from all causes by 50%. That is equivalent, roughly equivalent, to smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. All right, so you know when you go to get life insurance and they say, do you smoke? And you say no. They should say, how are your relationships with other people? Because if they're bad, it's like you're smoking. I don't even know how many packs is that? 15 cigarettes a day? I don't know how many are in a pack. I was never a smoker. 15 cigarettes a day is what you're smoking if you are living in isolation and generally broken relationships with other people. You're killing yourself. It's not in question. The Bible is telling you it's true, and so is modern science. Those are two pretty big authorities. We should probably listen to them. The Bible is saying actually it's even worse than that, though, because it's not just your body that you're killing. It's your soul. It's your spirit. It's who you really are. Your relationships are one of the very few things that will last beyond this life. And if they're broken, you are setting yourself up for a very long failure, not a short one. Human life is about love. You were made to run on relationship. When you buy a car, you should put into it whatever it was made to run on. Would you agree with that? Could you get your car to run on something that it was not made to run on? Maybe you couldn't. Some people could. People with enough skill, and if they put enough effort into it, sometimes they can get their cars to run on vegetable oil or alcohol or all kinds of different concoctions. But guess what? Those cars are not going to run a long time. If your engine is running on something that it was not made for, you are destroying it. And that's the point. So that's how we're unpacking here from the Bible, from Ecclesiastes, that first lie. I don't need anyone else. And then what about the second one? The second lie there that I can't relate to anyone. The idea here is that I could have success without a success that's actually in isolation. And Ecclesiastes is telling us very clearly that success in isolation is an oxymoron. If I think that I'm succeeding, but I'm that image of that man working in the darkness all by himself, then I'm not really succeeding. Because where I'm going to end up is not where I think. I'm going to end up in a whole different place. And unpacking that very first lie, where it all begins, the lie that I can't trust anyone. The truth is that if you want to succeed in your life, you must trust other people. you must first put your trust in God, and then as an act of faith, because people will let you down over and over again, but as an act of faith in God, trusting that He will take care of things in the end, you have to continually put your trust in other people, in people that God has placed around you for your good. This is the only real way to success. And that's what Ecclesiastes is talking about in verse 12 at the end there. When life attacks, when it's like the enemy is attacking, I know we're not literally being attacked by physical enemies right now, but life attacks us like an enemy all the time, doesn't it? When that happens, two can defend themselves. And a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. What Ecclesiastes is telling us here is that real success and power come from unity with other people. They come from a group of people working together and supporting each other, not from an individual trying to succeed on their own. There is far more power than we realize in our friendships, in our relationships, in our families, if we could access it and build those relationships closer and deeper. The man who's completely isolated and working on his own is a terrible image of prison, of slavery. But also, similar to that person is the one who has a lot of acquaintances, but no deep friendships, no deep relationships. We need deep unity with other people to really succeed in this life. Sometimes you've felt it. Maybe you have a close friend who, when you call them up or you meet with them for coffee, maybe it's been a long time, and just being around them, it wasn't anything in particular that they said in the conversation, but just being around them, you walk away from that conversation and you're energized. It's like the clouds have parted from your life. I hope most of you have had this experience many times. A deep friendship, deep unity between two people gives power and energy to life that nothing else can bring. So this is all the vision for why we need to have deep relationships. I hope that I've convinced you. You need friends. And you need to know your neighbors and have deep relationships with them. And by your neighbors, I mean the people who are around you, whether that's physically in your neighborhood, right around your house, or around you in the different circles that you live in, your church, your work, your biological family. We need deep relationships with other people. We cannot succeed without them, and we're killing ourselves if we don't have them. So now let's talk about 2 pieces. One, how do we choose the right friends? How do we choose who we should put our trust in and open up to? And then how can we ourselves be good friends? How can we be the friend that someone else needs? And so here we're going to go through a number of verses in Proverbs, and so we'll have those up on the screen rather than me reading them out of a Bible in front of me. And so, because we'll go to a number of verses here, let's take the first one, which I think is Proverbs 13, verse 20. And we're talking here about how do we choose good friends. Walk with the wise and become wise. For a companion of fools suffers harm. Now here the book of Proverbs is indicating to us that we must choose good friends, good people to be around us. Walk with the wise and you will become wise. The companion of fools suffers harm. This might seem simple at first, but actually this takes deep humility. It's a recognition that the people I surround myself with actually have an influence on me. See, that's another lie that many of us believe. It's related to those first 3 lies. It's that I can just kind of be around whoever I want, and they're not going to have an impact on me. I could be around people who are doing the wrong things, but that's not going to influence me to do bad things. Well, it's simply not true. It's not how we were made. Whoever we spend the majority of our time around, we will slowly, over time, become more and more like those people that we spend the majority of our time around, especially if we have deep relationship with them. And so it's very important that we choose wisely. Where's my core community going to be? Now, there has to be a balance here. We're not saying never talk to someone who acts the wrong way or who's doing bad stuff. We actually want to reach out to people who are doing bad stuff and try to bring them into a community that can help them. But we must be careful to have our core community, the people that I have my deepest relationships with and spend most of my time and energy around. Those need to be people who will lead me the right way. Now, here comes the rub. If you surround yourself with wise people and you have deep relationship with them, at some point, you're going to want to run away. Why would you want to run away from wise people? Because they're going to say things to you that you don't like to hear. Let's have the next verse up on the screen. This is from Proverbs chapter 9. We looked at this verse last week. Do not rebuke mockers, or they will hate you. Rebuke the wise, and they will love you. Instruct the wise, and they will be wiser still. Teach the righteous, and they will add to their learning. This is about choosing friends, because if we're going to choose to be around wise people, and we're going to stay around them, we're going to have to be the kind of people who accept criticism. Because a wise person, if they see something in your life that's wrong, something you need to improve on, and let me just tell you, if you think there's nothing wrong in your life, or you think there's nothing you need to improve on, you're a little bit deluded about where you're at. Very deluded. We all have huge areas that we need to grow in, and huge things that are still wrong in our lives. And when we surround ourselves with wise people, what's going to happen is that those people at some point are going to speak into that. They're going to say, Isaac, you're going the wrong way. Isaac, you got to change that thing. You can do better than that. And at that moment, I'm going to want to run away. I'm going to want to break relationship with them, because it hurts when someone tells me that I'm doing the wrong thing. So when I surround myself with wise people, I've got to cultivate in myself the ability to not run when someone tells me I'm doing something wrong. I got to say, okay, I'm going to think about carefully and pray about whether you're right, whether this thing really is wrong in my life, and then I'm going to do something about it. So, as we choose wise friends, we've got to cultivate this attitude of humility so that we can accept the things that they're going to tell us. Next verse for choosing wise friends, Proverbs 27 and verse 10. And here we're going to talk about the idea, and sometimes the lie, that there's no one around me that I can be deeply friends with. Maybe some people are caught on, I'm going to choose the wrong friends, but some people are caught up on, there's just no one for me to choose. None of these people who are around me are good enough to be my friends. Well, look what we see here in Proverbs 27:10. Do not forsake your friend or a friend of your family, and do not go to your relative's house when disaster strikes. Well, that's interesting. Better a neighbor nearby than a relative far away. And sometimes this happens. Many of us are in that situation. Many of us, some of us are blessed to have our biological family right around us and the people that we grew up with right around us. But many of us live far away from where we grew up, our biological family. That's the situation that I'm in. And sometimes I don't want to reach out and ask for help or build deep friendships with the people who are right around me. A neighbor is the people that are around me, the people that God has put in my life. So what I'm going to say here from this verse in Proverbs is that God has placed in your life the people who should be your friends. God's not going to leave you out on a limb. He loves you. He's not your enemy. He gives us everything we need. If you ask him and you seek him, he will show you who the people are, and they're probably already right around you, who are supposed to be that wise community that's building you up. So the second point that you can write down in your notes today is this: pick good friends, but don't be too picky. Pick good friends, but don't be too picky. Don't believe the lie that none of these people that I know are good enough for me. That's the lie that I believed growing up because I didn't trust people and I experienced isolation from them. All right, let's go into our final section, which is going to be this: how can I be a good friend to other people? Many times, if we're in life and we feel like I don't have deep friends, I don't have deep friendships, I don't have close relationships, the reason is not everybody else out there. Very often, the reason is right here. The reason is that I am not being a good friend to the people around me. And so I am repeatedly cutting off relationship, even if I don't recognize that. So how can I be a good friend? And we're going to have 3 points here. The first point for how can I be a good friend is this: be there. How can I be a good friend? I need to be there. Let's look at Proverbs 18 and verse 24. One who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin. But there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. And if we want to be a good friend, this is the image. A friend is one who sticks closer than a brother. A friend is someone who is there at important moments, when someone's in need, when someone just really needs to talk. At big important events in someone's life, you need to be present. You need to make time for your friends. And this is an area where I continue to struggle. Sometimes we place the things that we're doing, our work, our mission, ahead of the relationships that we have. And that is a mistake. Let me give you 2 ways to think about this. The first way is this: you got to show up for the wedding. One time I had a close friend he lives in England, and he had done all kinds of things to make sure he was there for me over and over. He even came here to Vancouver and visited me all the way from England to make sure we maintained our friendship. And then he asked me to come and be in his wedding party and come to his wedding. And I was so caught up in the stuff that I was doing. I debated about it back and forth, and I didn't go to his wedding because I was too busy and I felt like it was impossible. It wasn't really impossible. I didn't show up for the wedding, and I permanently damaged our friendship. He's not mad at me. He forgives me. But by not being there at that critical moment, I took our friendship. It was a fork in the road. It could have gone deeper, or it could have become less of a deep relationship, less of a friendship. And I chose the lower path. Another way to think about this is in terms of priorities. What is my priority? I'm going to share this example with you because it just happened to me last night. I had a vivid dream last night. And in this dream, I had 2 close friends with me. And in the dream, the 2 close friends, we were having fun. They're 2 close friends who are my friends right now in real life. And we were having fun. We had just had dinner together and we were joking around, and then all of a sudden we heard a report on the news. This is a real dream that I had. It's kind of striking. And in the report on the news, a civil war had just begun. And I know that might sound a little funny because we're nowhere near a civil war. Well, we don't even have guns in Canada, really. But in this dream, it was intense. And we realized that the Civil War had begun right then. And we started talking together about what side we were going to go on. And all of a sudden, the 3 of us recognized that 2 of us, me and one of the friends, were going to go and join one side of the Civil War. And the other friend was going to go join the other. And all 3 of us immediately pulled out guns and aimed them at each other. I told you this is an intense dream. Okay? And because we thought if we don't kill each other now, we're going to just end up we're going to end up on the battlefield shooting at each other. And so we didn't know what to do, and we were talking about, this is my friend. Do I kill him? He's on the other side of this civil war. And after a few minutes, I turned to the friend who was on my side and I said, "Shoot him." I did. And he refused. He said, "I can't shoot him. He's my friend." And then the one who was on the other side, he aimed his gun at me and he shot me. He shot me in the leg. Now, I think he missed on purpose. And then I turned, and this is where I think I asked over and over again as I was waking up this morning, I asked God, what does this mean? I turned and I shot my friend dead. And he died right in front of me in the dream. I mean, it's a dream, but this is a person I know in real life. And then we went off to the Civil War. The war ended, we came back, life went on, only my friend wasn't there because I killed him. This is a question of priorities. The relationships that we have, the friendships that we have will last forever. Literally forever if we are followers of Jesus. The things that I'm doing, my work, whatever I'm caught up in the moment is just temporary. Even if it's a civil war and it seems so important, the relationships will last forever. It's what God was speaking to me this morning. The next point we have here under how to be a good friend is you need to pay attention to your friends. Let's look at Proverbs 25 and verse 18. Verse 20. Like one who takes away a garment on a cold day, or like vinegar poured on a wound, is one who sings songs to a heavy heart. Now you might want to write down these verses and think about them later. They're actually very deep. What Solomon, the writer of Proverbs, is saying to us here is that we need to be paying attention to our friends. Those who we're in relationship with, and thinking about what's going on in their life. Where are they at? What do they need? And what can I do to help? Because otherwise, if all we're thinking about is ourselves, just paying attention to our own minds and thoughts and wants and desires, we're going to end up running over our friend and doing things that hurt the relationship without even knowing it, because we didn't recognize where they were at. I do this all the time, man. I do this all the time. And the third point for how to be a good friend is this. It's related to what we already said under choosing friends. But if you're going to be a good friend, you need to speak the truth. Let's look first at Proverbs 28 and verse 23. Whoever rebukes a person will in the end gain favor rather than one who has a flattering tongue. We have one more verse for this point, but I'm just going to use this one for sake of time. Someone who rebukes another person will in the end gain favor rather than a flattering tongue. What is this saying to us about how we should be a friend to someone else? We said before that if you're around wise people long enough, they're eventually going to say things to you that you don't like. They're going to tell you that something's wrong in your life, or that when you offend them, they're going to come and talk to you instead of just shutting down and walking away. This is the flip side. If you want to be a good friend, you're actually going to have to speak hard words to your friends at the proper time. What happens to many of us is that our relationships remain very shallow because we start to get to know somebody, we're at church with them, we say hi, we're smiling, we're shaking their hand, we're joking with them, we do small talk, but then they do something that I don't like. And what's my reaction? How do we react when they do something I don't like? We just stop being around them. We simply withdraw from them. We never go and deal with the problem. And in order to be a good friend and actually have a deep relationship with someone else, you must be able to speak hard words to them. The Bible is very clear on this. When someone does something that offends you, you must go to that person. Not talk about them behind their back, not pretend like they don't exist. You must go to them and tell them what they did and work it out between you. This is what you must do to restore relationship. So there's our 3 points for how to be a good friend. And the last thing you can fill out in your notes there is this. It's just those 3 points. To be a good friend, you need to be there. You need to pay attention. And you need to speak the truth. As we come to the close of the message this morning, I want to say this, that friendship is extremely important. And it's also extremely complicated. Even if you followed all the rules that have been laid down here from Proverbs, from the Bible about how to be a good friend, your relationships will still be very messed up much of the time. Fixing relationships between people, fixing friendships, is the main reason that Jesus came to the earth. He came so that we could be forgiven of our sin, so that we could then have our relationship with God be fixed. And then by His Spirit, He could slowly, over time, restore our relationships with other people. And so, even though there is all this wisdom here for how we can be better friends, how to choose friends, how to get over some of our hang-ups, the truth is that in order to have deep friendships with other people, we need the power of God. In order to have deep relationships, we need God's power at work in us and in that other person. And so I would just encourage you at the end here that we need to be seeking God. If you have not given your life to Him, you need to do that now. Just do it. There's no reason to wait. Give your life to Him. Enter into a relationship with Him. Let His power work in you. That's the only real way to fix the broken relationships that are all over your life and our world. Let's pray.